Hey everyone, Milsurp Garage back with you once again with Charlie. Right, Charlie? How you doing? You a little hot, huh, Charlie? He's a little hot. Got one of my favorites to bring you today. Today we have the SVT 40. This thing is an absolute animal. If you're a Mosin Nagant fan, and there's a lot of them out there, a lot of Mosin Nagant fans, only because they're brought into this hobby through, the affordability of the Mosins. One cool thing about the Mosins is that it did a lot to help expand this hobby, because people that might not necessarily just want to just go out and drop $1,000 on a Milsurp gun, a Milsurp Firearm, will certainly go out and drop 100, or what they used to be. They were actually under 100, but even 100 or 200 or something like that, 200 and change on a nice one. These Mosins are everywhere too, so it did a lot to expand the hobby, and a lot of people became fans of them because of that. But any true diehard Mosin fan, you've got to find one of these. Of course, they're much harder to find, and the selection isn't as diverse as far as condition. You know what I mean? You might have to do a little bit more searching to get exactly what you're looking for, if you're looking for a certain level of condition or collectability. But they are there. I mean, if you want one, you go on Gunbroker. They're there. I mean, you could just want one tomorrow. You could buy one tomorrow. You know what I mean? If you don't really care, about originality or condition or exactly what year, stuff like that, what manufacturing plant. This is a 1941 Tula. I did a little looking, but I wasn't really serious when I was looking. And then when I turned serious and I really wanted one, I didn't take long to find out exactly what I was looking for. You know what I mean? And I didn't really know much about these things. To tell you the truth, stepping in the door, I learned a lot just from buying it and from owning it. You know what I mean? It's a gun that was way ahead of its time, so you definitely appreciate it. Realizing that this thing was put out there in 1938, the original version of it, and then in 1940 it was redesigned. There were some changes made, which made this called the SVT 40. Definitely ahead of its time, and I love the way this thing shoots, feels, the way it is designed, taking it down, taking it apart, cleaning it. It's like a pleasure. It's one of those guns that to me is like a work of art. The Garand is similar to that. You know what I mean? The way the Garand comes apart, and the way it's you just get a certain feel for it taking it apart. It's not even annoying to take it down and clean it. It's actually like it's interesting. You know what I mean? But look at this thing. Look at the size of this bolt to fit that round in there. I mean, amazing. It's unusual in the respect that it comes with a 10-round detachable magazine. Not your typical, for this time, detachable magazine that is specially tailored for the gun. It's you could get another one of these, just load it up and throw it in. You could potentially have like a belt around you with 50 of these things in it. That'll be just fine, good to go. You know what I mean? They say when you buy the aftermarket ones, they need minor fitting. I think that's just because the aftermarket ones suck. I think if you get an original one, you're not going to have any problem. But it is unusual that in 1938, that there was a semi-automatic rifle like this on the front lines in World War II that took a detachable magazine in this fashion, which one of the things that where it was ahead of its time. The firepower you threw down with this thing was amazing. Like everyone always thought, or at least I don't want to say everyone, but I always thought like the M1 Garand was special in a way, because there was nothing else that matched it firepower-wise, for its time. But this thing sure as hell did, if not outmatch it. You could definitely yank out one of these magazines, like this, and grab another magazine and slap it right in, and cycle the bolt like as fast, if not faster, than you would put another end block clip in a Garand, and these are 10 rounds and not instead of 8. You know what I mean? And just as and you could top this off. The Garand, you can do it if you really know what you're doing, but it's not really made to do that. You know what I mean? If you had 4 rounds in the gun and you wanted to be fully loaded and you had 4 rounds in your hand, it didn't work that way. You couldn't do that. You would be able to have another end block clip in your hand, and you could eject that end block clip and just leave it there, or put in another 8 round end block clip and pick up the 4 rounds that you left. You could do that, but you wouldn't be able to just have 4 loose rounds in your hand and 4 rounds in the gun and pull out the rounds and just slap them in. And it wasn't really cohesive to doing that. Which in wartime, those types of actions are important. You know, that could be the case between, making it out of a certain area or not. So the fact that it was top offable like that is, for wartime, is very important, you know. And it's just interesting how this pulls forward it's just a really interesting bolt arrangement. You'll see on these refurbs, the Russian refurbs, that the bolt is plum colored like that. Which actually, it's not necessarily a bad thing. It could be a good thing. You would want one of these to have been Russian refurbed, I would think. Only because you'd have less problems with worrying about the condition of the barrel or head spacing or anything like that. But to a purist, somebody that really wanted a highly original one would not be looking for one like this. Again, like I said, they might have to worry a little bit more about the shootability of it. Like, is it safe? You know what I mean? I think the fact that these were refurbed in Russia, and of course they were refurbed a long time ago. I mean, you'd still have to really give it a good check if you had any worries about its condition. But they are really cool, man. They have this really cool muzzle brake, and all of this these heat guards here. There's steel ones up here. There's holes through the handguard here where the operating rod runs through. But a long operating rod that goes all the way from here to here. And there's an adjustable gas cylinder here, where if it starts to get dirty, if the rifle's clean, you just want to keep this on the lowest setting, which is 1.1. And then if it starts having trouble cycling, would mean the passages inside are getting a little clogged up, you would crank it up a little bit to allow it to be able to cycle. So that's pretty cool, is that if you weren't able to like clean your gun and you were on some kind of mission where you were doing a lot of shooting over an extended period and it started to not cycle because the gas system was getting a little clogged, you wouldn't have to take it down and clean it at that point. You'd be able to crank up the power, how much gas it's letting through to allow the action to work. But once you got to 1.7, then you're stuck. That's as high as it goes, and that's that. But it would be pretty damn corroded to not be shooting at that level, if you ask me. But yeah, 1941 Tula. That's where I wanted to settle. But these things are good for 42, 43. There's Izhevsk ones, and there's one other place you guys are going to kill me for not remembering the name of it, but unlike the Mosins, these were made in 3 places. The third place, it's kind of like an oval with an arrow in it, is the symbol, and they're rare. They're the rare ones, you know what I mean? So that's what I'm saying. If you're looking for one of those, you're going to look a little longer, if that's what you got your heart set on. But I think they're the same. There's nothing really that's any different about them, you know? And this one came with this nice original sling that I really like. No bayonet. I got outbid on Gunbroker on a bayonet that I really wanted. It was a really nice one. And this was the gun, by the way, in my last video where I said, the bayonet for the Steyr faces, the cutting edge faces upwards. This was the gun that has the same thing going on. It has the cutting edge of the bayonet facing upwards on the earlier ones, you know. And this is one of the early ones. It has this movable sling swivel here, whereas on the later ones it's just a fixed sling swivel. And this muzzle brake is the newer style muzzle brake. However, the older one has 6 smaller cuts on the sides instead of 2 larger cuts. But supposedly these larger cuts were done because it needed more muzzle brake action going on. So they wanted to open it up a little bit, the Russians, and it was supposedly an improvement. So this was on there, and I'm sticking with that one, even though it might not necessarily be correct. It might have been part of the Russian refurb, so that would make it correct. The Russians refurb it and they put it on, makes it correct in my eyes, you know. And it shoots awesome. And one thing that's interesting is it has a fluted barrel. You could see on the, let me see if that's coming through. You could see on the neck of these cases those lines, those zebra stripes. They're not on there normally. This would be regular fired brass out of my 9130. And you could see on these the fluting. Now what that is there's no primary extraction here on this action. You can see when it's fired, this bolt just goes straight back. There's no turning at all involved. Even with semi-automatics, with some of them, when you pull back, there's a camming action that will twist and come out. So that twist, that slight movement back in the twist. Look at your M1 Garand. Pull your operating rod back on your M1 Garand and watch closely. You'll see there's a slight movement back with a twist. Then the bolt will move back, and that's a twist and a pull to break the cartridge case loose before it actually just starts pulling it straight back. Without that breaking it loose, which is why you have some problems with straight pull actions like the Steyr and the Swiss rifles, the K31, the 1911. That's why the GP11 ammo has that wax. The older ammo has that wax on there because they had an issue with that, so they would actually put wax there. That was like the Swiss way of doing it. The more modern way of doing it was to flute the chamber, to actually cut these striations in the chamber right where the cartridge neck area is. You see it? And what that would allow is it would allow gases to actually enter those flutes, and you could see how filthy the case is all the way down. Yet on one side it won't be. It'll just be on one side. There'll be a clean spot. See, there's the clean spot. Let me get a better example. You see how it's dirty here, and then there'll be one spot, like right there. See where it's clean? And that clean spot is the area where it was pressed up against the chamber. And then underneath it, where it's dirty, it's kind of the gases are allowed to enter into where the cartridge is to kind of float it, to help float it out. It's strange. This would never work with a bolt action because by the time the gases got in there, you'd say, why don't they do that to like the straight pulls? It wouldn't matter because by the time you shoot and then you're reaching for the bolt, that's all over. You know what I mean? Now, even if it was fluted, it's not floating anymore. It's only at that very moment, that exact moment that you're firing, and the gases are all inside here, and there's like high gas pressure from here to here until the bullet passes this area, and then the gases start traveling up here, pushing the rod. And when it starts pushing the rod and it starts to open, the gases are also pushing here to go past the flutes, float the case, and help with extraction. If you're having problems with your SVT with extraction, because I make sure these are clean and I'm having no issues whatsoever. This thing throws brass like 30 feet. If you're having issues, I hear that some people have issues with extraction. I would take a shotgun brush, dip that shit in hoppies, and I would get it right inside the chamber, and I would scrub the hell out of it. Make sure that you see that those flutes are clean. Make sure that your brass, when you fire, take it out and look at it. You should have, the lines should be uniform. If you're having, like, you're missing a couple, and you see that some of them only go halfway down, that means that they're clogged up and they're not even showing on your brass. You know what I mean? You should see uniform lines like that all the way around, all the way from the tip, all the way down to where the case is necked. And if those things are clean, this whole system is going to be working properly. Without that system, that's where you're going to have a problem. For that it's like when you go to pull a nail out of something, right? If you want to pull a nail out of something, you twist. You twist the nail back and forth, boom, it's out. You know, and if you just grabbed it and you just pulled, just straight pulling, it doesn't work as well. So that's the whole idea, is these are trying to just pull the nail straight out. So they have to have something else going on to just give a helping hand. Tokorov, genius. That's what it is. Anyway, that's the SVT. I'm going to try to post up some kind of range video with this thing, with me firing it. And we're going to have to give this thing some kind of special expose, because it is my favorite. Anyway, until then, I will see you guys.